Welcome back to the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. Raymond Joao believes if you have a good invention, you can get a patent and you can make it happen. He's a lawyer, an engineer, and that's just for starters. The name of his book is From Idea to Patent, an Inventor's Handbook. And Ray, you know what you're talking about because you have a few patents yourself.
Well, yeah, patents and business and entrepreneurial ventures. But I also like to be creative, and when you learn the skill sets like that, it transcends patents. But yeah, I do like to come up with new ideas for inventions, and I've had some pretty successful inventions in the past.
Like what?
Banking alerts. I was one of the inventors on a patent portfolio that dealt with patent and credit card alerts back in the 90s. And I also had invented a system for doing remote monitoring and control of vehicles and premises. And in fact, back in, I think around 2002, a Newsday ran an article about me because one of my inventions would have been able to take control of the aircraft on 9/11. And those patents were filed in 1996. And so, I've had some successes. I like to invent. I like to try to start businesses with my inventions. I was on a call this morning with some people overseas about developing a payment platform that uses certain blockchain technology. And
you're an engineer too. You can't. The average person doesn't come up with ideas like this.
Well, stuff like this is because I'm an engineer. If I was a chemical engineer, there might be chemical patents or mechanical. But the thing is, anybody can be an inventor. That's the thing, like you can have a patent on a food product. Basically, people patent things all over the place. But I live in Yonkers. I was born and raised in Yonkers, and the safety brake for the elevator was invented in Yonkers. Otis elevator. See, people didn't realize the elevator existed before Otis invented his invention, but he invented the one that would stop. Right? Otherwise, they were falling.
Good idea. That's a good idea.
And and the same thing with Edison with the light bulb. People had light bulbs, but he was the one who came up with the light bulb with the high resistance filament that would glow when electricity went through it.
So you decided to write this book to inspire would-be inventors around the world.
Yes, because I learned in the 35 years that I've been doing it, I learned that you cannot learn this in school. You cannot learn this. They don't teach it in high school. They don't teach it in college, law school, business school, nowhere. It's something that you just learn. Now, if I had probably just stayed as a patent lawyer and just done patents, I probably wouldn't have learned the skill sets I learned, but I decided to become my own inventor. And some time ago, I basically left working in the law firms and just devoted my full time to just developing my own patent portfolios. I'm a firm believer in formal education. I'm actually going for my 9th degree right now, and it's my 7th master's degree. And when I was doing I started with a bachelor's and a master's from the Columbia School of Engineering and Applied Science, and then I went to law school at St. John's. Then I got the business bug in me and went to Baruch, which is an excellent school, City University of New York. Got my master's MBA in finance and a master's in marketing. And then I decided about 10 years after that to go back to law school for my master's in intellectual property law. And the teachers were asking me, would you consider becoming a professor? And I didn't have the time. I grew up in Yonkers and I went to a technical high school, Saunders Trades and Technical High School, great high school. And when I went there, I took technical electricity. I'm on their alumni association committee. And I said, why aren't you teaching high school students about patents and inventions? And they said, can you help us? There was a question, can you teach? And I said, I really don't have time to teach, but I can write a book.
Oh, okay. So you basically break it down from soup to nuts in this book. I mean, you've got a chapter on every single step.
Yes. And what I wanted to do was, in this day and age with social media, young kids, people of any age, but especially young children, high school and college, and even pre-high school, they're doing stuff. They're creating intellectual property that they don't know about. They're creating copyrighted videos. They're creating logos. They're creating products and services. They're building their publicity rights, which is the name, image, and likeness rights. They're creating media rights, and so they don't really know that. But there's nothing that really teaches them about becoming creative in terms of inventions and solving problems.
Hmm.
And so what I wanted to do was I wanted to basically kind of look back to, I've had conversations with people, friends, family, and just people that want to know about patents, where I would sit and I would explain everything to them. And I said, you know what, I can do it in a book. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to make it so that it could be read by high school students and above, and let them learn how to think like an inventor. Because, like I said in the book, there are two different dimensions to this book. One is to teach about invention and patents. The other is to teach a different dimension, how to develop and hone your creative skill sets and problem solving capabilities, which, people don't realize once you start doing it, you develop the skill sets you develop the skill sets and you improve upon them. And then all of a sudden, that's how you get these people who are, they invent all the time, because you once you learn the trick, and the trick is easy, solve a problem.
It's like creating that pathway in your brain. And once you go down the road, you can keep going down it.
That's right. And what I tried to do in the book was I tried to break it down to show people that, listen, there's a process here, and anyone can do it. And people don't have money for patent lawyers. I know that, because I know a lot of people that say, I just don't have the money. And I know a lot of people that just couldn't do it, but you can do it yourself. And the U.S. Patent Office provides, services to independent inventors, and they actually have a group in the Patent Office that are examiners that help people that don't have patent attorneys. I got a call one time from a woman who said, I need some help. And I told her, call the examiner and tell the examiner that you request constructive assistance. And her rejected patent was then allowed because the examiner helped her identify the invention and wrote the patent claim for her.
Hmm.
And so the thing is, but it's the kind of thing that, once you learn to think like that, all of a sudden you're solving problems, you're building your creativity. And I think that's something that we were all born with.
Hmm.
And it just there has to be something that, like, it's some kind of impetus or catalyst to get you thinking in that way. And so I broke it down by how I did my invention. And I showed how I got a patent on a windshield cover, because I figured I wanted to take something simple that wouldn't require a lot of technology. So if you think about, if you had, if you put something on your car window to cover it from ice and snow, that's fine. You take it off in the morning and your window's clear. But now
Right.
everybody has an SUV, and the people can't reach up to the top to the roof.
It's true.
So
Yeah.
I wrote that patent, and like I said, I wanted to share my opinions, my knowledge, experiences, the techniques, and the feedback I've had so far is people are telling me, Ray, I understand this. I understand what you're writing here, and if I can just help one or two people, it's worth the effort.
Well, Ray, you've got all of these contacts in schools. You are where you grew up. Are you able to get this book in schools?
I am in the process of working on that, because I would like to see if I can get this into public libraries,
Yeah.
into public school libraries, and even into the curriculum. Because the one thing that I tried to do was I tried to make it cost affordable. Now the book itself is a heavy book. It's like a telephone book. It's like 540 pages.
Oh,
But
geez.
there's a print cost to that. But I was able to get them to do the ebook for $9.99,
Oh, good.
which is basically, that's lunch money. Um, but the thing is, I have reached out to my high school. I offered I offered to basically come in and basically help them develop a program, even if it's an IP club. I'm also going to be looking into corporate training, because I think these are books that probably could be used by companies to provide to their employees, especially those companies that have patent assignment agreements for their employees or involved in technology, where
Yeah.
they're looking for their employees. And to develop things while they're working for them. And a lot of times companies, 80% of their value can be found in their intellectual property, which are intangible assets: patents, trademarks, copyrights, and trade secrets.
Interesting. Raymond A. Joao, From Idea to Patent, an Inventor's Handbook. Great idea.
Well, thank you, Alice.
Tim Lawrence didn't start writing until fairly recently, but a life of trauma that he could never talk about gave him a deep well to draw on to produce his book of poems entitled Silent No More.
I started writing actually when I was 64 years old. I wrote my first poem. It just kind of happened, and then it just took off from there.
You say that poetry kind of helps you cleanse yourself from all of the darkness.
Yeah, I mean, for years I couldn't, for all of my life, I could barely talk about the things that I had gone through. I was raised to not talk about it.
Not to talk about what was going on in your house.
Right. You couldn't talk about the alcoholism, couldn't talk about the abuse, couldn't talk about any of it. So that was the way I was raised.
You couldn't even talk about it with your three brothers.
No. We never talked about it amongst ourselves. Even as adults, I was the only one that wanted to talk about it. And my other brothers just, no, that's okay. That's all in the past now.
So it's no surprise that you ended up with your own addiction issues.
Yes. Yeah. I went through my own issues with alcoholism and drug abuse from the time I was a kid.
But somehow you managed to have a life?
Yeah. I actually quit drinking and drugging at the age of 27.
But didn't start writing poetry until your 60s.
Right. Yeah. I was actually journaling one day. I was writing in my journal and I was just writing and I thought to myself, this kind of sounds like a poem. And so I just started writing from there.
Have you ever read poetry before?
No, not since grade school.
So is there a poem you can share with me?
Oh, well, yeah. I hadn't thought about it, but yeah, let me get my book.
All right. How many poems did you end up writing?
Oh, gosh, there's been over 200 poems.
Wow.
This is my second book. And my first book was 100 poems or more, and this one's over 100 poems. People were excited to have it. I mean, I people that read my poetry really like it.
How do they know about it?
Just word of mouth and from poetry readings that I did in Seattle area.
Were they open mics?
Yeah.
So you just seek out opportunities like that to read your poetry?
Exactly.
That's
So
great.
this one's hopefully going to do better through Fulton than my first book.
Okay. So what do you got?
So let's go with Daddy. This one just kind of came out of the blue. You ready?
I am.
All right. Hi, Daddy. You almost fell down as you walked in the door. Why are you walking so funny, Daddy? You make me laugh when you talk like that. I can't understand what you say. You're being so funny. Why are you taking off your belt, Daddy? That will be really funny if your pants fall down. I'm going to laugh when your pants fall down. Why isn't Mommy laughing? Why, Daddy? Why did you do that? I didn't mean to be bad. I thought you were being funny. I didn't know I made you mad. Mommy, I didn't mean to make you cry. I thought we were having fun. I'll try to be good from now on. I won't laugh anymore. I won't make him mad anymore. I know it's all my fault, Mommy. Why did you do that, Daddy? I thought you loved me. I'm sorry I was bad. It's all my fault. Please don't do it again. I love you, Daddy.
Oh, Tim, that is that kind of that says so much right there.
Yeah.
Right there. How children of abusive parents and alcoholic parents feel like it's all their fault.
Exactly.
How did you, I mean, what kinds of things went on in your house? Like, did you ever go to school with bruises and nobody noticed?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I grew up in, it was the 50s.
Yeah.
And, what went on behind closed doors was nobody else's business. Nobody, I mean, the priests and stuff would interfere when mom and dad would want to stop drinking. Then they would, take vows or solemn oaths or whatever, but nobody ever talked about the beatings. Nobody ever talked about all that kind of stuff, because that was, that was just the way it was in the 50s. If the husband beat the wife, that was just between them. So nobody ever did anything. I called the cops one night because dad was beating mom, and I was probably around 12 years old, I guess. And the cop showed up, and she just said, well, the boy must have heard me when I hit my thumb against the wall and I yelled. I think that's what I think he misunderstood what was going on and called you.
That's also so common.
Yeah.
Is abusive women afraid to get out of that situation?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. My first memory of ever of my father is him beating my mom. And I was still in diapers. I was just a little kid.
Yeah. It left a major.
Yeah.
You say you journaled?
Yes. Yeah.
When did you start doing that?
Actually, when I started getting into recovery in my late 20s.
So you were journaling all along then?
Yes. Yeah. But I was just writing down my thoughts and stuff, and then, like I said, at 64, it just sounded like a poem.
It just all came pouring out of you.
Yeah, and then I was writing 2 or 3 poems a day there for when I first started.
Are your poems well received when you read them at these open mic nights?
Oh yeah. Well, I've got one fan, I guess, or a lady up in Vancouver, Washington, who started reading my poems, and now they use them in a meditation group she belongs to.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, I was just floored. I just recently found that out. But yeah, I mean, I've gotten all kinds of feedback about my poems, and people feel like they get emotional when they read them. Yeah. I think you got emotional when I just read the one.
I really did. I really did, because I was a reporter for years and did so many stories. Cops showing up at homes, children that are abused, social workers trying to get them out of an abusive situation, and for a myriad of reasons can't because of our laws, and addictive and abusive people protecting each other and not the children. And it just kind of, it's something, it just shouldn't happen. And you just sound like you were able to get through this. And I think that's a miracle. I think that's the story here, right?
Well, and that's what I try and, I get choked up. That's the message in most of my poems. Is I try to end them on a hopeful note. Daddy, that poem didn't end that way, but most of my poems I try to end on a hopeful note, and that's what I try to get. What I try and get through with my poetry is that no matter what you go through, there's always hope.
Oh,
just keep going, and there's always hope.
How many poems you got in you? You've got 200 published. You going to keep going with this?
Oh yeah, I've got a couple of poems already. I've got a folder on my computer called Book Number 3.
Oh, geez. Okay. Do you think you'll ever write a book?
Like a novel kind of a
Like
thing?
this, yeah, like the story of your life kind of a thing?
I wouldn't really know how to do that. Poetry, my poems are, it's been called my memoir because it's kind of a chronicle of my life. I would not know how to do that as far as writing a memoir. I would certainly love it if somebody would want to help me do that.
Well, you never know, Tim.
Yeah. I mean, I have no idea where this is going to go from this point, but I'm open to anything in the future.
All right. Tim Lawrence, Silent No More. Thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you very much for having me.
On the outside, looking in and taking notes, that's Kenneth Ray Sidberry Garrett, author of The Gospel According to Man. Now, let me set this up. Your character's backstory is amazing. Brought up by a teenage mom who knew her son was destined to be a preacher. When he gave her eulogy before he was even a teenager, people were falling on the floor. He was left poor and black in the South in the 60s. He knew his future was grim, so he took off to Philadelphia where he started a storefront church. It becomes a mega church, and then there's a couple of murders. Ken, take it from there.
Well, actually what happens is it was him and another friend, and they started the church together. And years passed, they had a falling out, as power and control often does between people who are friends or whatever. And the main character is a bishop of this church now, and he himself and two of the church members, officials, are found dead at the altar. And the whole kind of question is, and it's kind of based on the premise of the story, which is this: many people profess a faith of doctrine. If you are a Christian, it is the Bible, and that's your gospel. If you are a Muslim, it's the Quran. If you are Mormon, and I can say this because my best friend is really a Mormon, it is the Book of Mormon. If you're Buddhist, you have that. But also there's the side of us that says that we have our own gospel, the gospel according to ourselves, the gospel according to man. And that is, we want what we want, how we want it, and when we want it.
Right.
And there are times when those things come into crosswords. And that is, the things that we say that we stand on, we tend to be a little bit more selfish about things that we want. In this story, after this bishop is killed, during the investigation, there's kind of a rewinding of his life. And the question is, where in his life did those things come into conflict? Where in his life did those kind of crossroads moments meet? And how did that lead to him being killed?
So I guess like any man, woman, we all have feet of clay.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So is there a failing on his part? Is that what you're saying?
A failing is kind of a strong way to put it. I think it is because we live in this kind of duality of who we are. And that is, we profess to be strong Christians, but day to day, week to week, and we are challenged by that carnal self of who we are. Mm-hmm. We are challenged by the fact that we may be told to be obedient, but we choose, because being human, we want this. And in this book, and just maybe, God said, I want you to go and do mission work. And this guy said, no, I want to build this mega church. And so, we are kind of confronted with those choices. And in his life, he was confronted with those choices. And being human, I don't care if you're a priest or a pimp, I don't care if you're a bishop or a barber, you still have that struggle. And the question is, in his struggle, where did he succumb? Who did he step over to ascend to be the mighty man of God and to have this great national following, this big church? Where was his failings, and when did he submit to his own gospel according to himself, man, versus the gospel of Christ that he said that he stood for?
Okay. What inspired this?
Well, you know what it is? I say this all the time. I am not a smart person. I'm really not. I am, and I say that, you know, people say, well, yeah, but you've gone to college, you've worked in finance, you worked on Wall Street and I said, but I'm not smart. However, I am curious. And I said, smart people think that they're smarter than they think they are. Curious people understand that they're not. And I am a person who's extremely observant. And I think writers have the ability to do something that a lot of folk don't. And that is that you could be in a place and in a thing and step out of it and really observe it from afar. And I kind of look at things that way. I mean, I could be in my church or at church and I watch folk praising and the preacher shouting and like stuff going on. And I could be kind of caught up in the midst of that, but then I could step out and say, kind of, what's going on? Why is this person kind of feeling the way that they're feeling? Why are they kind of so excited about what he's just said? I used to work in the banking business, and there would be a reception, and I would be there shaking hands with clients, and then I would like step out of it and say, wow, how does he work the crowd the way that he does? How does she do that work? So having that kind of duality, if you will, being able to kind of be in it and out of it at the same time.
Right.
And also being a person who is a faith person. I know in my own life, I've had those crossword moments, and I've had those moments. I've had friends that have had those moments. And I see it. I mean, I watch like major preachers and like public folk who have had those moments and have that kind of ongoing battle. And it is an ongoing battle. So it's more being an observant, it's more being a person that is extremely curious, but it's also being a person that is reflective of my own kind of walk and my failings and my falling down and getting up and watching friends and family and others kind of do that, kind of have that same struggle and that same battle, if you will.
Right.
And so that kind of inspired me to write this story.
Okay. So you were in banking, right?
Yep, I was in finance.
Okay.
Yep.
Where did writing come from?
Well, I've always written. I mean, I probably was writing when I was a teenager. Actually, this is horrible. When I was in the 8th grade, I would write these like salacious, horrible, dirty stories and sell them for a quarter. So I've always written.
You would sell.
And I mean, it'd be like the worst, good God, and just kind of stuff that you got, just horrendous stuff. But again, I was a teenager, and that's what you think about, right, as like a kid.
Sure, of course.
And so what happened was, I mean, I've always written. I mean, I have mounds and mounds and binders of stuff that I've written. So, but it was for myself. I just wrote for myself and I wrote because, writing is my best friend. I mean, writing allows me to be any person I want to be, any character that I want to be. I could be rich, I could be poor, I could be black, I could be white, I could be fat, I could be thin. The other thing about writing is I'm a person, and my wife would say, you have a problem here, that I don't have a lot of filters and I don't like live within lanes. And writing allows me to kind of live outside of lanes. I say to be a good writer, you have to have you are only limited by your creativity and the lanes that you're willing to walk in. And so I've always written. I love to write. As I said, writing is my best friend. Writing is my escape. And when I was in the corporate side, it really stopped with that really creative side of myself.
Yeah.
When I would write, I wrote like stories for my church. I write stories for other people. Other folk would give out speeches. Actually, when I was in banking and my manager needed anything written, he said, write this. I was in a small company and the CEO would have me write everything for the company. So it's just probably a part of kind of who I am and a part of the wiring. And I think is one of my gifts. Like I said, I'm not smart, but I'm curious. And I really believe this, that I can really write. And I love storytelling. I love great stories.
I can hear it.
I just love a great story. It just blows me away. And great characters. Oh, girl, stop.
Are you going to keep writing?
Yes, actually, I have. I have a book that's going to be coming out, hopefully in another month, and it is called "I Was Raised by the Full Moon." And the reason it's called that is when I was 7, 8, or 9 years old, my family owned a juke joint in the South, and a juke joint is like a little kind of cafe club.
Okay.
And my mother had to work, and my grandmother would take me there every Friday and Saturday. And so it was a very adult place, but my cousins owned the place. So you have like the fried chicken, like billowing, and you have like the music going and folk dancing and smoking and drinking. And then you had the occasional Friday night fight or Saturday night fight. And what happened was I was sitting there on this stool observing it all. And that's where I learned how to dance. That's where I had my first beer and being these adults. And the name of the place, the cafe, was called the Full Moon. And so that's why it's called I Was Raised by the Full Moon. And there are 8 short stories about various things that happened during that time. Then I have another book, which I'm going to submit in the fall. It's been a 25-year journey. It actually is my first big novel. And that's going to be submitted in the fall.
Okay.
But this other book, By the Full Moon, will be out in another month or so.
Okay. What are you doing to promote your books? Anything?
Direct messaging, family and friends, and other folk. And that's probably where, at least from kind of my side, I kind of, have my kids helping me with my kind of Facebook and bolstering that out. The other thing I did, which is kind of cool, I had these like business cards made up, and the book is on the card, and I have a QR code that I can hand out to somebody. You can actually scan the code and go right to the website and buy the book.
All right. Kenneth, Ray, Sidberry, Garrett, The Gospel According to Man. Thank you.
Well, it's been a blast. Thank you so much, dear.
The name of our next book is The Lost Legacy of Ham, Ancient Bible History. It was written by Dr. Joyce Andrews, who was a minister and author of several other books. She died in 2021, but her message lives on through her followers like Yolanda Durso. She joins me now to talk about this book, which is a sequel to Dr. Andrews' first book entitled Bible Legacy of the Black Race, The Prophecy Fulfilled. Now, does this book, The Lost Legacy of Ham, stand alone, Yolanda?
No, ma'am. It really needs, you really need to read the first book. That's my suggestion. It certainly did help me quite a bit. Now, they can get a whole lot out of the second book, but I would suggest that they read and they will really understand the struggle and where our African Black people are in the Bible. Because, they say, well, where are we, but.
Tell me what the books are about.
Yes, ma'am. There's 3. But now she wrote the problem, the Bible Legacy of the Black Race, her first book. And that first book is about the struggle, and God never starts anything with struggle. He's perfect. Our people messed it up. Okay. And it was a prophecy that for a period of time, nobody's going to know anything about our history. It was a prophecy because our people were the first when Noah got off the ark after the flood. Noah had 3 sons. He had Shem, that's the father of the Jews, Ham, the Black people, and the European white is Japheth. But Ham in the Bible shows that started civilization first. So that's what Sister Joyce is talking about, the lost legacy of Ham. Well, what happened? Why we don't know anything about where the Black people come from? And all we know, and when I was in Black history in my studies, all they taught us was about the struggle. And, I knew about Frederick Douglass and the abolitionists and all of those, Harriet Tubman, who made things better. But why did that problem, why was it there? And I found out it was a prophecy. God said, I'm not going to let nobody know about you, because when I let Ham get off that ark, he started civilization first. And that's in Genesis, the 10th chapter. And it shows that the Black people, and they were of color, they started civilization first, and they were very mighty in the land in the book of Genesis when you read that. And our people rule for more than 4,000 years. And it was a great era. But nobody knew about it because our people, because they were doing so great, they got into witchcraft. And I guess my little nephew, he says, They got into him, thinking they were all like that because they were most beautiful. They were the most spiritual at that time when they were in tune with Jesus, and they ruled, and the kings and the pharaohs, oh, they just had the best of everything. More than 4,000 years, history says, okay? And our people fell away from the Lord. That's the big problem. And that's the story in Isaiah, the 19th chapter. That's her first book. And she talks about that. Our people were warned more than 144 years. Isaiah warned our people. That's a prophet, major prophet in the Bible. Ezekiel warned our people, if you don't come back to God, if you don't recognize that God is the one who blessed you with all of that glory that you have, I'm going to remove all of your history, and they're not going to know about your history for a period of time. That was a prophecy, not a curse, okay? And our people would not listen to the prophets, Isaiah, Ezekiel, and Jeremiah. So when you read the Bible, even in Isaiah, the 19th chapter, 20th chapter, that's our story. You'll see where the Black people were warned. If you don't do this, I'm going to just, you notice now when you talk about Africa, it's dry. It's nothing there anymore. God said, I'm going to take all that away. But I do notice that people like John Anthony West, the Egyptologist, they and the others that are helping him, Peter Lesimur, they go over there and they dig up and they found all this great history that our people had back there. And we lost it. Our Black people lost it because they fell away from the Lord and they would not come. God did, God knows the whole story. So he looked down in history and he said, well, they're not going to come back to me as a nation. And he moved on to the next son, Shem, which is the Jews. And Jesus was born a Jew. But Isaiah, the 19th chapter, tells our story, why our people went through slavery. And he says, if you don't come back to me, he warned them, okay, in Isaiah 19, he said, I'm going to have a person from the north. They're going to be a cruel Lord, and they're going to take you over into a foreign nation with your buttocks hanging out. That's in the Bible. And they're going to take you over.
Now we go into the lost legacy of Ham.
Right. Now that book is telling us why the European white people were doing so great. What is it? This is their dispensation. God has been through all three of Noah's sons. Our Ham, he blew it. Shem, Jesus was born a Jew because it was time for Jesus to come. So the Lord said, I got to get all y'all saved. Right now. So Jesus was born a Jew, but predominantly the Jewish nation does not believe that Jesus is the Messiah. Now there are a few elect Jews, because I hear the young man, he's a Jewish preacher, rabbi. He teaches and he preaches about Jesus. There are few elect Jews, the Bible calls them, that do believe in Jesus. But as a nation, they just don't believe. They're still looking for the Messiah. So, God doesn't wait for nobody. When it's time to move on, because he's interested in saving souls, keeping people out of hell, he moved on to the next son, which is the elder son, Japheth. And that's the European white people, okay? So that's why you hear about in Europe. I was listening to Billy Graham, and he's talking about the Black people. And he says, we think that the gospel started in Europe, but it didn't. It started in Africa. And it's all on the Great Pyramids, okay? So this is what Sister Joyce is talking about, the lost legacy of Ham. She's bringing out in this book that the prophecy has been fulfilled. It's over. We got Jesus. And I think she does say it in the 19th chapter of Isaiah, and a great one is going to come. I really believe that was Dr. King, because he and his followers, they did the great work, to get us, get our rights back, okay, as Black people. And he said, I'm going to send you a savior, and they're going to deliver you. And the prophecy is over. And the prophecy is over now. And that's what she talks about in the lost legacy of Ham. But we want our people to know, and this is what Sister Joyce would teach us, I want the African Blacks to know their history. Because when you know your history, where you come from, you do very good in the present world. And we need to get this message out to the folk, which predominantly Black, they tell me, in prisons and all of that. The Muslims are teaching them, but because the Muslims do not know Jesus, they're not able to go as high as they need to, because they just believe the Old Testament. But the whole Bible, we're under Jesus, the New Testament now. We need to know Jesus has delivered us. And when you got Jesus, as Sister Joyce had in her time, she used the Lord enlightened her to find all this history for her. She was a housewife. Her husband didn't want her to work. They had 4 children, and she was raising those children. That's why it took her so long to write her books. I asked her husband, how long did it take her? And he said about 16 years, because, she's raising 4 children. She was the pianist for the church. She played for 2 choirs, and, she's teaching at church all the time. She was our minister of education during that time. And she's the one who taught us all the history as she was doing all of her research. So he said he said about 16 years it took her just to write this book.
Well, Yolanda, you're doing a great job.
She taught me well, and they did.
She did.
I tell you, I was so interested. I was so glad to know the truth,
But I just hope it's not used as an excuse.
For what?
When you see how Black people have been treated over the years, is somebody out there going to say, see, they got what was coming to them?
But you know what? But our people did get what was coming to them, but it's over. Now, if we want to do better, now that's the part that we've got to be mindful of. If we as a Black people want to do better, we can. And we know that. But look, we had a Black president, so we know that we can do better. You can't say, well, the white people holding me back now. Jesus, if you got Jesus, you can do all things through Christ, which strengthens you. And we can make it. We can make it with the help of the Lord. But we got to stay with Jesus. And that's what Sister Joyce was always talking about. Our leader is Jesus first. If you follow him, you can make it through all the discrimination stuff. You got to deal with it. He says there are many afflictions of the righteous, but I have delivered you out of them all. So now if you work with Jesus and ask him to help you, you can make it in this life as a Black person, even though you got to still deal with prejudice. That's just going to be here. Like the Bible said, the poor are going to be with us all the time. But you don't have to be poor. Right. You can just be one that helped the poor. How about that? That's what I chose to be. I chose to be one that's going to help the poor. Amen.
Yolanda, you are amazing. You must be a great speaker.
But you know what? I've been taught by the best. That's what I say.
With you at the helm, I don't think you'll have any problem getting this message out and getting these books sold.
And we're blessed because I have a TV Bible study every Sunday. So we have our book promotion there, and it's on YouTube. We have book promotion there because our program from her last book she wrote, Your Store Right Where You Are. I talk about that book. It's on YouTube, so anybody can view that. Your Store Right Where You Are.
You're awesome, Yolanda. I really enjoyed this. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. I do appreciate you.
Dr. M. Shaheed Aadam is the author of 7 books. In addition to the one we're talking about today, it is entitled African American Military, Mason, Muslim, and Indigenous Black American Tale of 4 Worlds. Now, what do you mean by a tale of 4 worlds?
Ooh, that's the fun part.
Okay.
Okay, so African American, just being Black in America is already a situation. Meaning, like it's an adventure. You almost need to get hazardous duty pay just being Black in America, right? So that right there is already an adventure. Everything from being profiled and so on and so forth. Then African American Muslim or a military, being in the military. Even in the Gulf Wars, people looked at us as people going to kill some other people and everything. So that was like a weird stigma. But while being Black in the military, I had to deal with quite a few things. So that was another world, meaning like just being a young Black man in the military, I had to prove myself just that much extra. Being a Muslim, of course, I had to practice Islam, such as fasting or not eating pork. It was a running joke hearing my friends say, "Oh, they go Jimmy Dean," because Jimmy Dean's, used to make a lot of pork.
Sausages, yeah.
Yeah, pork sausage. I said, hey, Jimmy Dean, once again, I like it was happening. It's all around the ship. We do that for like weeks and weeks and weeks. So, I got used to a lot of pork jokes and everything. But also during the time when Saddam Hussein was in power, mind you, I'm a black man from South Central Los Angeles and a Muslim. However, I have no clue about that over there. However, people did look at me saying, hey, Saddam Hussein is messing up over there. Why are your people doing that? What's going on over there? And it's almost I had to answer for other people, other Muslims' atrocities or business or whatever.
Yeah, well, we did that after 9/11, right?
Yes, we did. Yes, exactly.
It was like, oh, you're Muslim, you must be a terrorist. It was,
must be a
spying
terrorist
on Muslim communities.
Yep. And then being a Mason, that's my favorite part. So Mason is always the butt end of conspiracy theories and Illuminati and so on and so forth. But being a Muslim in there, I try to explain in a book that how Masonry started with black people and Muslims way back in Africa. I can say back in time of King Solomon, but more recently in the 900 AD when the people of Mali, then known as the Mud Masons of Mali, they have the same Masonic rank structure as we do here in America and in England. I served 20 years in the United States Navy, but somehow, some way, I ended up on a terrorist no-fly list. So that meant that I had to get all these beautiful pat downs every single time I went to the airport, an extensive background check every single time I had to fly, and it was quite nerve wracking and almost disgusting.
How did that happen?
That was a good question. I don't know exactly how that happened, but it was like I had to always constantly code switch, because I had to show the world or show the people when I'm getting a pat down that I'm not who they think I am. I had to show them and say, I'm not the one you're looking for. I'm not the one you need to be worried about. And, and because my name is Muhammad. Hey, I already knew that I was going to get some kind of backlash just for that alone.
Does that continue? Is that still the case?
No. As time went on, it kind of died down just slightly, kind of died down slightly. However, it's always the eyebrow raise. Like, for instance, I was taking a flight up to Northern California. And I had like a little, it was like a survival bracelet, nothing special. It was right during the time of COVID. It had like a compass on there. It was a parachute cord or whatever, and like a little serrated knife. But the serrated knife wasn't nothing that you can actually cut anyone. It was like something to maybe cut a little bit of line. Well, as I was I took it off and put it inside the tray, and went through was going through the airport up in Oakland. I kid you not, they pulled it. It was almost like I committed a big time crime. They put me to the side, had the police come and talk to me. I'm like,
oh, man.
What is this? What's wrong? And they gave me a citation, and I couldn't. And then I was on the no-fly list. I could never apply for TSA pre-check for like several years from that point on.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and then I worked for TSA, and I dealt with people that had knives, almost like bigger than your hand, almost weapons, not guns, but other type of weapons. All we did, we took it away and say, you want to check it in or you want to throw it away? We'll throw it away. And we throw it away. Never gave him a citation, anything but me. Oh my God, I got the 3rd degree.
You say this book will answer quite a few questions people have had about African Americans and what really make us tick. What is it?
Example, on the elevator. Right?
Yeah.
You might have a black man who he may have a suit on, he may not. Let's say he just have some sweats on.
Okay.
Right? And no slides or whatever, no slippers, just sweats, some tennis shoes or whatever. And fairly decent, clean in the face, whatever. A lot of times in a non-black person get on the elevator, they most likely stand on the other side of the elevator. And by them doing that, they never figure who this man may be. Come to find out, this man, as they get off the elevator, he may have an entourage waiting for him to put him into a Maserati or whatever, or in a limousine, and they go. And this individual, this non-black individual, standing on the other side of the elevator, they go, oh my God, not knowing that this man is literally famous. He has no intention to try to, quote unquote, rob or mug this person,
right?
Non-black individual. Okay. So some of the questions are, what is the reason why people non-Black individuals, why do they do that? Why do they have those feelings? So those are some of the things that I speak of in my book.
Are you out talking about your book?
Yes, I sent it to some libraries. I put it in a library system. I'll be going to a few classrooms, may go to a couple of universities in my area, just to open up a good dialogue, And some things I may do in the upcoming months.
I feel like we have to do the same dialogue over and over again.
Yes. There was one time when I saw this, it was so interesting. It was right at the time when President Barack Obama got elected president, right? I was in a supermarket, and a young white woman had her purse right there in the basket and just walked to go and get something, whatever. Under normal circumstances, she would have had her purse really tightly clenched to her. But it was kind of interesting. That was the only time in my life where I saw people become lower their guard, per se.
And now you feel like we're going backwards?
Yep, and went backwards. Yeah, went backwards.
So Dr. M. Shaheed Aadam, African-American military Mason and Muslim and Indigenous Black American Tale of Four Worlds. Thank you. We hope you enjoyed this edition of the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. We hope to see you back here every Saturday night at 8 o'clock, or listen to our podcast anytime on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, just to name a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where independent new authors come first.